Regrettably, I'm about to cause trouble. Written and narrated by Amie McNee. Chapter 14. Rufus was sweeping the floor, setting up the shop to reopen after our day away. I had slept badly, if at all. I was sitting on my floor court, head resting against the cool wall, chewing on bread and butter, not bothering to close my mouth. "Do you believe there was really a ghost at Lord Sotheby's?" the fairy asked, sweeping around me. "I don't know." Bread flew out my mouth and onto the floor. Rufus swept up the chewed residue with a blank face and then turned to Hildy, who was reorganising the shelves. "Do you believe that it was a ghost, Hildy?" "It is possible. Sometimes we deal with real presences. Sometimes they are crabs with candles attached to their shells." "What?" said Rufus and I at the same time. "St. Benedictines in Little Wallington," she explained. "Father Banham was losing his congregation to the father in Great Wallington. Each night he would send a dozen crabs loose in his rival's graveyard with lit candles strapped to their shells. It worked a charm until we showed up and realised what he was doing. They had a full exorcism before we divined the truth." "I'll be damned. Crab ghosts," Rufus muttered. "Crab ghosts," Hildy confirmed. "But as for yesterday, well, I certainly felt something uneasy in that drawing room. What do you think?" Neither of us answered. The whole experience had made me feel ill. I had performed a spell, and it hadn't been a light and breezy one. It wasn't a spell to stop the milk souring, it was a spell to summon a spirit. Was that bad magic? Or good magic? Or not magic at all? I shivered. If we were in France, I would be found out and burnt at the stake. There was a knock on the door. "Good morrow, witch," said a voice. It was the bellman. I jumped up, giving him a surprise. His old face was creased in a smile. "The day has come. I have a letter for you." "Finally," I said incoherently, mouth full. "Thank you, sir. You can be rid of me now." "Wouldn't want that," he said friendlily. "Be nice to see you 3 to 4 times each day, every day." "Don't exaggerate," I reprimanded him. He laughed jollily, in a way that only town criers could do, and left the apothecary. I paused, looking at the seal of my family, then opened the letter. "I am confined. Come to see me in my rooms today." "They want me back." I held my chest. "They want me back." I literally jumped with excitement. I looked at Rufus, who was smiling. Then I turned to Hildy. "Will you help me get dressed in my old finery?" She didn't answer right away, so I signed it for her. "I will get Zita, and we will dress you." She left. My heart was in my throat, but not in the fear of demons way, in the exciting I am returning to my true life way. I grabbed hold of Rufus's hands and danced around. "She must have thought of a better solution for me, Rufus." He smiled at me and spun me around. "They want me back." I turned around and around until I reached the stairs, then hobbled dizzily up to my room. Zita and Hildy came to my chambers a few minutes later. I had laid out my dress. "Let's get back into this thing. Hildy, could you do my hair? I would like it tight back, and maybe we could use some oil." Zita held up a hand, silencing me. "We will help you dress and put up your hair, Maude, but fair warning." I frowned. "Do not ruin this moment, Zita. Planetarily speaking, this is not a day of harmonious union. This is a day of fire. The stars, they are not in a favourable place." "Fuck your stars." I held my tongue and made a loud huffing noise. "We just don't want you to get hurt," Hildy added. "My mother wouldn't send for me if she did not have a new idea, a better solution than the one I am currently living." "If you say so." Zita held up my bodice. Hildy, whether through skill or spell, had flattened all my curls. Not a single one sprung loose as I walked to my home. I had left Jimmy at the apothecary, and I hadn't the strength to lug all my belongings back on my own. I would fetch them later. I would send people to fetch them later. I didn't like walking in all my finery through town and across the fields without a carriage, or at least an escort, but I kept to the dry paths and made eye contact with no one. No doubt people would be wondering who I was and why I was out alone, but I couldn't have turned up at Sherburn in my witch's outfit. I would have been sent straight back to where I'd come from. After what seemed like an awfully long time, I walked over the stone bridge that separated my family's home from the town, and Sherburn rose up above me. I had expected to feel relief, a sense of homecoming, but instead I felt nervous and out of place. She was not a welcoming building. Stony, crenellated turrets, small, thin windows, a big fuck-off moat. It was a castle made to keep people out, not to invite anyone in. Still, it was my castle. Mine. I did not want to see my brothers or father. Presumably they would have all dispersed after my banishment, but I couldn't risk it. I walked around the back of the castle, keeping my head down. It was very quiet. No one working in the grounds. I entered the servants' entrance to the kitchens. "Christ protect me!" someone yelled. I jumped. Our cook, Maggie, had jumped higher. "Sorry, Maggie, I didn't mean to frighten you. I'm here to see Mother." She gave me a pitying look. I wonder how much the servants knew. Probably everything. Maggie was more masterful at gossip than at cooking, and she wasn't a half-bad cook. "She's confined, Poppet, in her regular quarters." I nodded. "Do you want me to fetch someone to take you there?" I frowned at her. "I think I know where I'm going," I replied incredulously. "Of course, Magdalene." She hadn't addressed me as lady. My hairs were on end, my breath shallow. The excitement of getting my letter had dissipated entirely. Something was wrong. I felt tears preparing themselves to be shed. My mother's lady's maid was standing in front of her chamber doors. "Agnes," I said sternly, summoning all my strength. "Magdalene?" She was not surprised to see me. "Lady Maud," I corrected, but she ignored me. "Did you come up the servants' stairs?" She had a smirk on her face. A hot rage crashed over my body. "Get out of my way. Let me see my mother. And you would do well to remember your lowly place in society." I pushed past the insufferable woman. The room was, of course, extremely dark. My eyes struggled to adjust as I entered. The windows were boarded up tightly, and the fire was only embers. "Mother?" I whispered into the dark. I felt as if my heart was being worn on the outside of my body. I felt so small, so young, so vulnerable. "Mama?" I said. I moved towards the large bed, grabbing hold of the large wooden poster to support myself. Was she not well? Was that why I was summoned? "Magdalene," she murmured. She was waking from a deep sleep. "Aye, it's Maud." "Come sit on my bed with me." I felt my tears begin to fall, a little earlier than expected. I climbed onto the warm bed and found my way next to her. My mother propped herself up, and I pushed a pillow behind her back. "How are you, Mother?" I asked, finally seeing far enough through the gloom that I could see her face. She looked wasted. The baby must be stealing all her food. "Where in God's name have you been, Magdalene?" She had let me on the bed, but she had given me no signals to touch her or embrace her. I gave her the distance. "I couldn't be married off to a peasant, Mother. I had to protect myself." She sighed. She seemed too tired to chastise me. "How is the babe?" "It feels different this time round." "Maybe it's because you are a little older." "Yes," she nodded. "I feel thinly spread. My last, I think." "Your body has done this many times, Mother. It will know what to do." We sat in silence. I didn't want to ask her what the plan was. I didn't want to leave this moment. It was so nice, clouded in darkness, speaking soft words between mother and daughter. The door creaked open. I was ready to rip Agnes apart. But it was not Agnes. It was my father. I jumped off the bed. "Magdalene?" He nodded at me. I bowed, my virginal blue skirts billowing out around me. He came to stand by my mother's side. "How do you do today, my lady?" he asked stiffly. "Well, my lord," said the tiny, frail thing. "Only one more after this, and you'll be on par with Lady Mary of Kent," he snorted. I saw my mother wince. There was a silence. I needed someone to say something, anything relevant to me and my life. "You summoned me here?" I managed. "There have been unfortunate tidings, my lord." "You've died," he said flatly. There was a beat. "Am I a ghostly apparition?" I tried to laugh. "What do you mean?" "Edward cannot annul the marriage." I stretched my hand out, trying to find the wall. I needed support. "There is evidence that he did lie with you, so an annulment on the grounds of you withholding conjugal rights is not possible." "What evidence?" I asked. He sighed, unwilling to talk about it. "Something about the remnants of sheets in the fire, something about his kinsmen being witnesses. I know not the particulars. It is distasteful to talk about, and it is not important." "Then we must get a divorce," I whispered. "He does not want a divorce." "I do." "He will either get his annulment on the grounds of malfeasance, or he will become a widower." My humours turned cold. You do not want to be convicted of malfeasance, Magdalen, my mother whispered. I do not want to die either, I replied. And yet die you must. My father strode to the door. He was done. I shut my eyes. I could see them, my brothers, all standing behind the door. He was going to let them in, let them attack me, break me apart, tear my mark from my body with their teeth. I heard him turn the latch. I awaited my fate. But fate never came. The door closed again, and it was just me and my mother. What does he mean? I said, eyes still closed. Your father will put out the notice tomorrow. Sweating sickness. I don't have the sweating sickness. You did, and it was the end of you. Where am I to go? What am I to do? My mother's eyes were cold. You seemed to look after yourself well enough without us before. I'm sure the farmer would still take you, but you're too good for him, aren't you? I stared at her. Are you too good for him now that you're dead? Jesus Christ, I whispered. What sort of a mother are you? You must forge your own path now. No. Would you rather be tried as a demonic witch and be jailed or burnt? There was a buzzing sound in the air, a vibration that seemed to be entering my body. It buzzed around my legs, around my mark. I think my mother was talking to me, but I couldn't hear her. Burn the mark, sucks at your teat. Burn the mark, sucks at your teat. You will need to give back your dresses and the family jewels. That sentence rang out loud and clear. I walked towards her. Each step shot another stronger buzz up my body. No. Then you can deal with the authorities, be accused of malfeasance, and bring shame on this entire family. Not if I'm already dead, you can't. I stared at her for a long while. She could not look me in the eye. You are a bad mother, I whispered, like the devil was in me, or was me. I hope your unborn babe dies. For his sake, life would be far better in the dirt than with a mother such as you. Her face changed. Not angry, not even sad. Horrified, perhaps. Leave, Magdalen. It's Maude, I spat, and I curse you.